The Church of England, no less, has an environment programme, which they publicise on their website, but they're pushing for churches, local parish churches, to become eco-churches, Beryl. What do you think of that? Eco-church. Would you go to an eco-church?
I don't know. I'd like to know what that would involve, becoming an eco-church.
Yes, well, the Church of England's whole environment programme has this as its descriptor on their website. It says, "We believe that responding to the climate crisis is an essential part of our responsibility to safeguard God's creation and achieve a just world. Climate change," it says, "hits hardest the poorest countries and poorest people of the world. Meantime, the widespread destruction of the natural world is a crisis for creation. Our environment programme," they go on, "exists to enable the whole church to address this in faith, practice and mission. This includes tackling our own carbon emissions, aiming for net zero carbon by 2030 and our wider work."
So how do they go
an
about
eco-church would be in line with that project.
This in faith, practice and mission?
How do they do that? Well, that's interesting, because what they're talking about in faith means they believe, of course, God is the creator. Great. In practice, of course, what they do, including how they worship, I guess, and in mission, how you reach out to people. So in all of that, I think it's just a phrase meaning all of it. It's like saying, well, look, every man, woman and child is... So you mean everyone. It's sort of redundant, but you say it to emphasise the point that it's everyone. My feeling is that that's all that means.
Right.
An eco-church signs up and can get grants towards developing their church, and maybe their church building, if they have one, towards being eco-friendly, that is to say, and something very specific here, dealing with the climate crisis. Now, my problem with this, Bill, can we just analyse this description? This is straight from the Church of England website. First, I don't believe there is a climate crisis.
Right, okay.
There's a climate.
Yes, certainly.
Now, climate is really, it's just weather over a long time, isn't it?
Yes, whether it's cold or hot.
Weather in both senses. Whether it's cold or hot, and whether the weather is generally rainy or whatever it is, over a period of many years. That's climate. You just say, well, what's the average like? And, well, if you're going to go on holiday somewhere, you can look up the tourist board and it'll say, the climate is, and it will talk what the weather is generally like.
That's right.
So individual weather events are not important. It's raining now doesn't mean there's been a change in the climate. But everyone looking back over time can see that the type of weather we have year on year does change.
Yes.
So there is climate change. Not just
and there are such things as microclimates. And
yeah. Clearly,
the climate at the poles is different from the climate along the equator, for example.
Yeah. Is there a crisis? Let us know what you think, gentle listener. You can get in touch with the show. BerylAndPete.com will get you through to us. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave a comment on this and every episode. You can get in touch with the station as well. FlameCCR@gmail.com. We're Flame Christian and Community Radio, so it's FlameCCR@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. But I think climate does change, and as you say, it varies between different places. But are we genuinely in crisis? If so, I haven't noticed it. Where is the crisis? Oh yeah, there's a storm here and there, and we have hot temperatures.
We have earthquakes.
We have earthquakes, yeah.
Tornadoes and hurricanes.
Yes, we have those, but if the world is getting warmer, you might expect more tornadoes. I don't know if there are actually more, because the problem with me saying there definitely are is there's rather lurid headlines making rampant claims. It just doesn't seem real, and there are other claims that in fact there have been worse years for such things. But even if that were the case, that doesn't actually mean there's a climate crisis. It means there's climate change because the Earth's getting warmer, which I wouldn't dispute. I think it is getting warmer. You can easily show that.
Yes.
Temperature over time is increasing globally. Not by that much, but it is increasing. It's increasing gradually over time.
This is not a subject of which I'm intimately familiar. I read the news, I read what people say, I hear what people say, and I realise that some people are getting very exercised about it.
They are. Now, it goes on in this statement, Beryl, so perhaps we can move on to this. It refers to the churches. Now, they're talking about the Church of England, but I guess we can apply this, see whether this applies to the church generally. Now, I am part of the Church of England. You're not, but we're both Christians, so part of the church, if you like. So it says here that the church, in this case, Church of England, but we could try and apply it generally, has a responsibility to safeguard God's creation and achieve a just world. Now, just take that bit out. Would you say that that's true? Is that part of the church's mission?
when we talk about
Yeah.
saving things...
Yeah, it says safeguard, but I guess that is saving, really. I think you're right. They've used an unusual word, which really means saving, doesn't it? Safeguard?
No,
I mean, they use the word
I
safeguard.
don't think so.
What is the difference then?
When I
Saving.
hear the word salvation,
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
of a particular kind of salvation. I think of saving souls. We can't save people from death.
No,
Physical
good point,
death.
yeah.
So I think that's out.
Yes, okay, so I don't think it's not really talking about that. It's talking about safeguarding God's creation. Perhaps protecting would be a better word. Do you think?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think as normal people, we should be protecting ourselves and helping other people to protect themselves
Yeah.
from most adverse effects.
Well, they explain a just world as being important because climate change, quoting again here, hits hardest the poorest countries and the poorest people in the world. So it's trying to look after people who are poorer because they're being hit worst, is their claim here. It seems like a good thing to achieve. I think it's uncontrovertible. Isn't that something we should be doing as a church? We together, if we believe that the climate crisis, which I questioned it, but if we do believe that it's affecting the poorest countries and the poorest people the most, we need to take action to protect them as a church. Or as the church.
No, I think the church's primary calling, because I'm an evangelical, I believe the primary calling of the church is to preach the gospel. And I think protecting the environment would come as part of following the gospel.
It needs to sit within the context of the gospel.
Yes.
The good news that Jesus is Lord means
Yes.
everything falls into place
yes,
under him.
because then, if Jesus is Lord, our lives will be guided by him
Yes.
such that, first of all, we would earn money.
Yep, got it.
And then we would save money, and we would not spend money needlessly on the wrong things.
Would this be better then, a distinction that's not made so much these days as it used to be, between church and parachurch organisations? So the church itself is about forming communities together which worship the Lord and then getting others to believe and form new communities.
Yes.
That's basically its job.
Yes.
But parachurch organisations might do something else, like they might say, well, we're a parachurch organisation in that we're going to take missionaries from this local church abroad to do that, because it's part of the overall mission of the church, but we're assisting the church worldwide in doing this. Or it might be that we're going to take donations of food to a poor place where there is no food and give away the food. But that would be a parachurch.
Yes.
Not always, but it
Well,
can be a parachurch.
I'm not against parachurch organisations
So I would say, would this
doing
be
that
would,
kind of thing.
Would this be better done by a parachurch
I
organisation?
think so, because it will confuse the church's message.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yes, I think that's right.
It would have to be enabling environmental change, would be performing a dual mission, if you like. It would have to come alongside preaching the gospel. I don't like things interfering with the preaching the gospel. I think as Christians and as the church, that is our primary objective. Yes?
So we think it's misguided then to try and have churches become eco-churches. Rather,
Yes.
you should have a parachurch organisation which can encourage and facilitate looking after the environment, helping those in poorer countries, supported maybe by individual churches if they choose to do so.
Yes. Well, we already have that happening.
Yes, I know, I agree, yeah.
For example, Flame is a parachurch organisation.
Our own station here, yes.
Yes, we don't believe in interfering in churches providing the gospel.
No.
But we believe that broadcasting it over the whole world and trying to control the world by it is not the church's job.
Just finally, I think my problem with this statement to the Church of England, I deliberately took it in their own words,
Yes.
so as not to be disingenuous and say, oh, they believe all this nonsense. But some of what they say is good, that we just highlighted, but some of it are claims that seem to me to be patently false. So we'll have quite a few listeners to Flame and in the podcast version of this, who are scientists by background, and they were saying, well, why didn't you point out that, in fact, carbon dioxide levels, if they increase, is actually a net benefit to the world? And that is a claim that's made by many scientists. And because the church is aligning itself with one scientific point of view, which is contradicted by other scientists, I think that's another mistake they're making, to align themselves so much one particular point of view, which I know has a lot of political clout at the moment. seem to me that's the reason they're doing it. I think they're trying to get on the bandwagon, ride the wave, and other metaphors like that.
Why would they do that?
I can put forward a few ideas.
Okay.
One, the Church of England, realising that it's messed up, it's losing adherents, and losing people and money, needs to get in with the secular world so that it can get grants. Financial reasons. Second reason could be that the people involved, and this is very common, people involved, particularly leaders in the Church of England, come from a non-science background, so they convince themselves that they can't read science. They have to be told what to believe about science. So therefore they don't do their own reading around the subject, and they just believe that there is no countervailing point of view. They actually believe this stuff. They've been fooled into believing it because they just believe the political belief that you need to strive for net zero, believe that it's scientific because they haven't bothered, or they believe they can't do the reading around the subject that's required.
Right.
I think that's quite common. It's a common. I can ask the listeners, there'll be many scientists among our listeners, but those who aren't scientists, can you understand scientific papers, or at least the abstract, the summary of it? You believe that you can't, maybe, but can you? Can you understand them? I'm not a scientist. I did a degree in science, but I'm not a scientist now. You can read around the subject and get alternative points of view.
Oh, certainly you can, yes. Practically every field.
I believe that they haven't done that, or they wouldn't be doing this.
So do you think that the Church of England might introduce environmental change as part of their learning in Bible college and so on?
Yes. They introduced some time ago insights from psychology into theological training.
Right. If you're teaching, which vicars and bishops and all the rest are supposed to be leading their congregations, that they need insights from psychology to be able to get along with their students and their...
I think you need appreciation of what science is teaching.
Yes.
Psychology, it's an art, I would say, it's not a hard science, that's the definition of science. The data that they use... That's a subject for another day, but I think it's a similar thing in that people are assuming that the scientists have the fundamental truth and that biblical insights need to change to fit in with that. I would argue it's the other way around.
I'd like to add a verse to think about. When Jesus was on the earth, he said this, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." Yeah,
I understand what you said there, seeking to follow Jesus first, and other things will fall into place. What do you think, Norman?
Yeah, I was going to develop my thoughts along the line of what Beryl has just actually said. If I had the opportunity to be talking to a upcoming teenager who was thinking about their life, I would first of all encourage their Christian faith and their understanding and their reliance on God. But I would also be interested in what direction they felt their life was going to go. And some might say, yes, I'm good down the sports line. Some might say I'm good down the arts line. But some might say I'm good down the science line. Or even I'm good down the biology line. And I would then say, yes, okay, well, from your relationship with God, apply your direction of wanting to go in your life, keeping God as the perspective. What do you want me to do in my life? What should I do? Where shall I go? And so on. And don't be surprised if God doesn't actually lead you to go outside of the UK into some other countries. Don't be surprised if God doesn't lead you into becoming an agronomist, for example, and God puts into your mind new crops, new ways of developing farmland, and so on, because God is the lead and God can lead people down those lines. And I think that's the perspective, rather than to actually say, oh, I'm going to do this, and by the way, I'm going to go to church now and again. Perhaps it is, like Beryl said, seek ye first God, but also be prepared to apply all your skills and abilities down an ecological line. And there are people who are doing this, and I think the church ought to encourage them. I think the church ought to look for them. I think the church ought to put all of its strength and resources behind them in terms of enabling them to go down their line, to develop all of these things for the good of mankind. God, at the end of the day, is in control. We're not. We're not going to change the world. Diddly squat. But God is in control, and we can intelligently do things as God's servants, as God's hands and feet, in enabling the world to progress.
Yes, amen to that.